one that's transgressive, so it breaks the rules. It's marginal, which means it's kind of on the outside of the mainstream. And usually it's unsuccessful in its initial release. But it finds an enthusiastic and vocal fan base as time goes by. While Behind the Mask, the Rise of Leslie Vernon does not fit that description. The film is so much more than that. Although its reputation has grown slowly, many critics rank it with the greatest horror comedies of all time. We're so happy to have three members of the creative force for Behind the Mask here to help us celebrate the Halloween season. So please welcome stars Nathan Basil, Angela Goethals, and screenwriter-producer David J. Stevie to our Sinister Halloween Con stage. I put name cards on your desks, so make sure that you hit the right spot.
Wait.
I'm already in trouble. This is the fastest. Hey.
Hi, you guys.
Hi.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi, Angela.
Hi.
It's so nice to see you, David.
Hello.
Now I understand this is the first time that you three guys have been together on a panel. Is that right? Or have you been at other cons together?
I think we appeared at one really, really early on, way back in the day, like 2007 or something like that.
You can also hold it in your hand, so it's less awkward physically. But I mean, you do you. Yeah, no, that looks great. That looks totally natural and normal.
Why do I always get the busted one?
The screenplay writer is spazzing out.
That was a
He's having
smart
little.
move. Was that intentional?
This is actually the fastest that
It's sort of a screenplay writer's existential crisis that his microphone doesn't work.
You guys
He's like, no one can hear my words. No one. Sorry, go ahead.
It's funny because it's true. Have anybody ever been to a Q&A that's gone off the rails this quickly? Okay, just checking.
June, thanks, David, for that. David, my first question is for you, actually. I understand the Halloween season and the movie Halloween play a part in your writing of this script. Can you explain how that came about?
Yes, I can.
And would you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I do, and Angela and Nathan and I were just talking about, I do want to quickly, before we start, I do want to acknowledge that we're here, glad to be here, but we are still very much in solidarity with our SAG-AFTRA brothers and sisters who are still picketing for a fair contract. I know we're going to get that to the end, but it's important that we acknowledge our support for that, and it is still an ongoing battle. Halloween is my favorite slasher, and I tell this story a lot, that I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, and I moved to LA, and my dad had called, so I don't know, how's it going out there? And I was feeling rather insecure, wondering if I made the right decisions in my life. Should I have not gotten a real job? And Halloween was playing as I was falling asleep, and I remember sort of drifting off thinking, I wonder if Michael Myers ever had a moment of doubt, or he wondered if he was doing the right thing with his life. And what's his backup plan? And just it sort of blossomed into this idea of Michael Myers or a killer like that sort of struggling to achieve a creative dream. And it just, the analogy is very obvious. It's anyone who's trying to do a creative pursuit.
Yeah.
You have your moments of doubt, and why wouldn't Jason or Freddy or Michael have that moment of doubt? And that's how Nathan's character, Leslie Vernon, was born. It's just an analogy for, am I doing the right thing with my life?
Yeah. And what better creative dream is there than being a supernatural mass murderer?
Boy, you said it.
Yeah, really. Angela, you of course are well known for your roles in Home Alone, and the Home Alone movies, and television work such as 24, in which you played Maya Driscoll, a brilliant, personally speaking, one of the most moving performances that I've ever seen on television.
Thank you.
Okay. What attracted you to this role?
Initially, I think, and it's great that you're here to hear this. I read the script and I was like, well, this is different. I didn't quite know where I was inside of it, but I was along for the ride, and it shifted so gracefully, and the character of Leslie Vernon was so intricately crafted that I was like, oh man, I would love to do this movie. I'm also a total horror like rookie. I knew very little about the genre. I was scared of horror movies as a kid. That continued into my adulthood and even until right this minute as I'm talking to you. So I was like excited about the prospect of being that girl. And then, my gosh, my callback was with this guy. And yeah, no, you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it's
remember
you. We remember that movie we did together? Yeah, we totally did a movie together. And I just, I fell in love with the actor that he is, the person that he is. That came, during the filming of the movie. But you quickly know, like, the people who are going to teach you, to stretch you, to inspire you. Like, you kind of feel that right away. And I settled into that groove immediately in the audition room. And I was like, I'm gonna be so sad if I don't get this part. And so, yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah. Nathan, it's interesting that you brought up your first meeting with Nathan, because when I was talking to Nathan a little bit about this when we were just on the floor earlier today. I was a sixth grade teacher for 35 years, and I had met Nathan briefly on I think a couple of occasions here at Sinister CreatureCon. And I hope you take this the right way, because you've always reminded me of the one student that I would have every year who was smarter than everyone in the room, including me, but had a gleam in their eye that made you like them instantly. And it's almost the same thing that Andrew was talking about too. So to underscore the point, yeah, you don't know how to take that now. You went to Juilliard, right? Okay. So what led you to the role of Leslie Vernon? What was the attraction to you?
It was an audition, one, and it was for something that felt like, I don't know, it's completely unusual. You don't get scripts like, you rarely, 99% of scripts are, you've read this before. It's some kind of derivation of something that you've seen before or, read before. This script came along, and not only was it really interesting and really original, it was also mathematically perfect. It was all the rough edges had already been sanded off. It was just a really, really perfect construction. So that it felt like, well, my only responsibility here is to just not screw the script up. And if I do that, if I can tend to that, and I think I can, then we have the chance of having a home run here. Never do you get to come across a script like that. And then never do you get to have a real chance of nailing a role like that if you're not a name. This is my first film. I've never done another, so I wasn't a name. I wasn't going to get them any traction that way, so there was nothing incentivizing them to cast me other than the take was a lot different from everything else that you guys were seeing, and it felt like it gave them more options. So
Well, I think, speaking as a horror fan, and I'm an ancient horror fan, so my interest in horror films goes all the way from the Universal films. Is this not working? Okay.
Oh, sorry. I keep forgetting to do this.
Let's see. Should be on.
We're in your head.
Can you just really
Yeah. Okay, I'll
do
get
this
closer
one, I
to
swear.
mine.
Did you not get Angela's microphone lesson earlier?
Or you could just hold it, guys.
Charlie, how do you think?
I've lost
But
control
now he
of
can't
the
get it out of the
class.
thing. Oh my, I
Charlie,
can't
Charlie,
take
how do
you
you
anywhere.
Get control, Charlie? You're losing control.
I've got it. I've got to maintain it. I've got to maintain it.
Charlie, remember when you said Nathan reminded you of the smartest student
Yes,
in the class? Would you like
Yes,
to
I do.
amend that statement in any way?
Well, I said he was smarter than me too, so that makes sense.
Okay, thanks for coming, everybody.
Nathan, I heard your I heard Angela's reaction to meeting you for the first time. During that audition, what was your reaction to Angela?
Well, she's just game to play, and that's what we were, I think, trying to find was, is there any kind of more juice with this matchup than there is with this matchup than there is with this matchup? And with Angela, it was immediately, everything was, you know, the phrase with improvisation is, the key to great improv is to be yes and in your response to whatever it is that you're getting from your partners, you know. Well, the same thing works for acting. You can shut things down and you can be, you know, closed off and you can be, you know, reflective and whatever, but the value in acting is having a partner that is responsive to you and you can
Sure.
bounce off of each other, and it just immediately it was clear that that's just not a problem for us, and it's basically where do you want it to go, because we can take it anywhere you want.
Yeah. I was going to continue my thought from the first time talking about being a fan of horror films through the years, right? You know, from the Universal right to the modern horror films. I love it all. And a lot of times when you go to a horror film, and you've heard a lot about it, you're disappointed because there might be elements that are terrific and you know, the script works in one way, but I've seldom ever seen a movie where the script is this perfect, where everything comes together, where I wasn't disappointed at all. I was surprised in the right way. It was just kind of a revelation, you know, to discover this movie. So, David, writing a perfect script like this, I've read that you sometimes have a tough time referring to yourself as a screenwriter, and I can't, for the life of me, determine why.
First thing I can say is, wow, thank you very much for that. It's never has anything in mind been called perfect, or do I consider it perfect? I think that, wow, that's a great question. I think you're never satisfied as a creative person, because you always keep thinking of new ideas. You're never really you're never satisfied that the thing you hand over is the last one. But actually, I kind of want to pivot back a little bit to my take on Nathan and Angela, because as a writer, you do your best to create characters and a story that will make sense and will hold up, and nobody's going to be able to punch holes in it. But I liken it to, you raise a child until they're college aged, and then you send them off into the world, and you hope that you have done the best that you can, and that everything you put in there will stick. But when you write a script, you then have to turn it over to actors who take it from there. And I think I appreciate all the compliments on the script and the writing. I do. I have to admit, though, that what Nathan and Angela brought to those characters, that was those characters going off to college and growing up, if that makes sense. It had nothing to do with me at that point. I put down on paper what I felt the characters should be and where they should be going. but Nathan and Angela inhabited those characters and took them tenfold farther than my imagination. And so much so, in fact, that we were searching for the Kane Hodder type or the Nick Castle type for Leslie Vernon. We wanted the big hulking guy, stuntman guy. And we auditioned some, and they were good. But what Nathan brought to it was just this completely unexpected quirk of this guy being so personable and so likable that it was just a whole other level. It wasn't just this automaton who was letting people behind the curtain. It was like, oh my God, I actually want to have a beer with this guy. And that's what Nathan brought to it. I mean, the chemistry between Nathan and Angela is unique to these two human beings. So I appreciate the kudos on the script. I personally don't think it's perfect. That's just the trap of being a writer. But I also know that the entire art, it's a collaborative art, and every part of it depends on somebody else around you. It's never just about the script. It's not. You have to have people who acted, who edited, who directed, who do post-production on it, who Gordy Hobb did a fantastic job with the music. There's so many other people that go into it.
Can I add something, Charlie?
Of course, Angela.
You're gonna say no. You would. I just wanted to say a little bit, piggybacking on what you said, Stevie, about the likability of this character, and I think looking back on it, it's very possible that my lack of any real horror knowledge was somewhat useful, because half the time I was in a romantic comedy, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't like, oh wait, but this is horror and I know horror. I didn't. So I was just like trying to read the words on the page and act with my scene partner, but that likability and that sort of, wait a second, but wait, I like you, but wait, it's like part of I think the brilliance of the experience for me personally, and the brilliance of your writing, your performance, Scotty's direction, and like you said, all of the hands that touched this thing and held it and loved it and set it out into the world.
Well, it's a perfect segue to my next question, because I was going to ask you what it was like to work with Scott Glosserman, because it was his first film too, right? So what was his directorial technique? I mean, I've heard he was a really easygoing guy. So. Well,
I'll jump in and just, the process for Scott and I at the beginning was, we're like, this is crazy, right? Like, there's no way we could do this, right? And Scott was like, no, I think we can. I think I can get the money. I think I can get money. So we were just absolutely flying by the seat of our pants. And I got to be around on the set and watch that magic happen. But my impression of it pretty much the whole time was, this is crazy. This is so much fun. Oh well, this sure would have been a good time. And like, I was expecting it to end at any moment. But it's just a little engine that could, and it just kept trucking along.
And a big reason for that is because Scott's the greatest cheerleader you're ever gonna meet. And he's just so enthusiastic and, hey, Scoops, are we gonna do some Scooby-Doo today? And he would run at that, and he was wearing all these hats. Like, the whole thing could never have happened without him taking on like 7 different jobs.
Right, like rarely sleeping,
Right,
barely eating.
No, the last day, the final day of shooting in the Portland Downtown Library, he was a zombie. We were basically having to direct just to wrap things up, because he wasn't even, he was so worn down. I mean, it was just his energy, his passion, his know-how.
I think also it ended up being that we had this beautiful conglomeration, this beautiful assortment of people who, I mean, it sounds so cliche, but you work on a lot of films or TV shows or whatever, the cast doesn't always gel with the crew, You know, some people just show up and kind of do their thing, and everybody pretends to be, you know, nice and
It's
get
just a
along.
job.
And then, but it's like somewhere in the process of that, we all realized like we were just completely stuck together at the hip, and like this is like we're doing this because we love this movie. Like this is fun to be doing this right now, and the testament to that is that we've stayed friends. Like most of the cast, you know, it's 20 years now, and we're all still in touch with each other, and that's rare. So I would add that it was just sort of a really much a bond, a community, family sort of an experience as much as anyone's style.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just to add a little bit about Scott, like, as far as technique, I feel like his technique was that he was a kid in a candy shop, like, every single day. And one of the most interesting things to me when I started working with him was learning that he wrote his thesis at UPenn about horror, like about the genre. And it was obviously an intellectual exploration of this genre. So he kind of had this really interesting path to getting to making a movie for the first time and really deeply understanding what it needed to have, but not really having anything other than like a joyful exuberance every day and a huge heart and a massive degree of collaborative impulses, and really a non-director. Like, what do you guys want to do? Like, oh yeah, I love that. Like, it never felt like it was his movie.
Tons of trust, like way too much
Yeah.
trust. There's no way that I should have been given as much leash as I was given. And he was constantly just running the leash out. And I was just constantly, okay, here we go.
And then he would inject something like, oh my God, we got to do this. And he would sort of like explain why he needed to do something for some really abstract, intellectual, genre-related reason. And you're like, okay, yonic imagery, sure, yeah. But it all folded together in this beautiful way.
Is there any truth to the story that when a table read didn't go very well, that he suggested that you guys all go out and get drunk one night?
I wasn't accepting.
I had heard that story, so.
I mean, I'm not sure.
I don't think we really needed reasons.
No.
Yeah, there's no excuse
No,
to
no.
go drinking.
But also, I'm not. I mean, we knew right away that it was important to him that we bond, and so I don't remember the part of the table read not going well. But it's possible that what you mean by that possibly, or what people have understood, is that we didn't know each other, and we were maybe somewhat hesitant or not. You know, it's just human nature, and I think as actors, our superpower is that we're like immediate trust because you have to, but we're still people, and we still, have our way into the thing, and like, so I feel like he the first day was like, we're all going out together, we're gonna go to a bar, we're gonna drink, we're gonna talk, we're gonna like get real close, and that's what happened. I'm not at liberty to say anything else about what happened.
I was going to do like the lawyer.
Oh, sorry, that's all I can say publicly.
The structure of the film goes from Taylor's point of view, with the handheld camera, to kind of a serious, more traditional movie form in the second half. Was the film shot in sequence? Was that, or were those shots mixed up?
Largely the cinematic elements were done later on in the shoot. We knocked out most of the documentary stuff early on in the first 3 weeks, I think. Mostly was our push to get all that footage in, and then because once we started working with film, it wasn't just the cameras that we were using, but all the lighting instrumentation had to be added. The setups were going to take a lot longer. It was just going to be a whole different kind of phase. So
I think that was the time that I recall that Scott really did get, if he got apprehensive or nervous at all, it was when we started to shoot at 35, because all of a sudden it's like, you know how much this costs per foot? And, you know, we were trying our best to do this on a shoestring budget, and all of a sudden we had to do these, you know, really beautiful, complex 35mm shots, and it all of a sudden it turned into a real movie, and we had this crew around us. So
Crane shots.
yeah,
and,
the crew knew way more than we knew. Like, you know, the second AD.
Shout out to Jaron too. My God, that dude is brilliant.
Yeah, it's a tribute to a low budget film. When you look at it and you're thinking, I'm not watching a low budget film. I mean, the movie's beautifully shot. I mean, the set pieces, the locations, the Portland, Oregon locations in the fall. What
Yeah.
was it like October?
Yeah.
Just beautiful. Angela Taylor's character, it bothered me a little bit, and I've read a little
Hot
bit
take,
about
hot
this
take.
before. Well, not that way. Because she's in pursuit of journalism, but she ultimately does not stop people from getting killed. So, and she does have a change of heart, of course, and tries to save people at the end, but what did you see as the motivations for her actions like at the beginning of the movie? She's very much into the journalistic approach, studying this guy who wants to be a serial killer.
That is a really good question. I think I'm gonna say that the fact that she's so green plays a large part in it. I think at the beginning of the movie, she says she's trying to find her voice, right? I think she knows that this story is an interesting one and could be a stepping stone to some larger vision for her life and career, but I don't think she's contemplated it much beyond that. It's almost like she's Scott Glosserman as like looking at horror as like an intellectual kind of conceptual thing. I think the reality of it is somewhat lost on her at the beginning. And then I think she like kind of like falls for this guy a little bit. I think she gets I have to be coy, man. I can't just give it all up in the room. But I think that she gets lost inside of it.
And it is kind of subtle.
Yeah.
And that's a very subtle thing because there was one scene where you almost think they're going to kiss, right? And but then it kind of backs off.
Right.
Sorry to jump. So something happened last night. I'm sharing a hotel room with David Stevie, and
We don't want to hear about your hotel room shenanigans.
after that, so he's going through some scripts. He's got this script, an earlier version of the script, where there's a scene between Taylor and Leslie that is just, it's a fantastic scene, and it's qualities that we've talked about, but it was never in the script, and it was fascinating to see that a lot of stuff that was more explicitly romantic between Taylor and Leslie had been kind of removed from the final product. We worked it in on a more instinctual level, but it used to be there in the writing.
And I think that part of Leslie's character too is he's a charmer, man. He had Taylor right where he wanted her from the beginning. So I think not to let totally off the hook, but yeah, for all the reasons that Angela said, well, Leslie also wasn't about to let her get cold feet until you know what I mean. So Leslie had a lot of charm to have to do with.
You guys had some terrific supporting actors in that film. You had Zelda Rubinstein, Scott Wilson, the iconic Robert Englund. Payne Hodder makes a brief appearance in the film. Can you share some stories about what it was like working with those people? Speechless.
Yeah,
Hold on, we need lawyers.
you're
You have to plead the fifth.
So I don't think found out until after we were already in Portland doing shooting that they had jumped on board. Because again, the more cinematic elements were going to be shot, at the tail end of production mostly. So those deals were getting locked down while we were already on location. And as they're getting locked down, it's like, Scott Wilson. Really? Okay. Robert Englund? Now you're screwing with me. Now you're messing with me. Robert Englund? Zelda Rubens? So it felt like there was some momentum happening simply because the script was so solid. That was the best calling card that this film could have, but it was sufficient enough for names like this to have an interest in jumping on board. And I know that it's not until they actually get on board on location and see what it is that they're dealing with, what they got themselves into, probably most of the time. Well, these people, all of them, but particularly Scott Wilson, because his role was very much as a mentor. He just brought that mentor's heart with him. That's actually who he is, but he brought so much generosity to not just his work, but to his person all around that work. That part of what sings in the movie is his role and the role that he plays as a mentor for Leslie, not just in his career aspirations, but in his love aspirations and the kind of life that he wants for himself when he's not wearing the mask.
I was going to share a little bit about Robert Englund. I remember him, I think his first day on set, we were shooting the scene, but we were up against the van, and he's there, it's his first day. He's, iconic, epic, very sweet, very generous. But he said, he was kind of like, all right, let's see what these kids, let's see what they can do, kind of thing. And he said he watched us shoot that scene where I kind of corner him and I'm like, I know who you are. And he slams me against the van. And he was like, okay, I think we have a movie. I think he saw that, and he saw kind of what we were, where we were as actor creatures, and like what we were kind of, what was percolating inside of us, and where the places we were willing to go or able to go with each other and with the material. And I think he felt good about it, which when I heard that, I was incredibly, I like puffed up with like love and gratitude.
Yeah, and it was nothing but motivation to just keep on going. All right,
Right.
ball's moving in the right direction. Let's just keep going.
Right.
We're on a good thing. We just got to not fuck it up.
Word.
I think for me, Scott Wilson is, he was a mentor character in the film, he was a mentor character to everyone on set, and he became a mentor character. He and his wife heavily became very much like family to me and a mentor to me, and I miss him terribly every day. I think that my experience with Robert has been similar. Robert's always been very generous, and I rarely share the story, but we were at South by Southwest at the 10-year anniversary. And Robert had all his usual junkets he had to do, and we had finished up the day's work, and we were riding up in the elevator. We had this lovely handler, this young woman named Megan, actually went on to be a stunt woman. And so Robert and Megan and I are riding up the elevator, and she says, "Oh, Robert, you have to go do this radio thing at 4 o'clock." And he says, "Okay." He's like, "David, you want to come to that?" And I was like, "No, they don't want to they don't want to hear me. I'm the screenwriter. They want to hear Robert Englund. And I kind of sort of laughed it off. And we rode in the elevator for silence for a couple seconds, and then getting near my floor, he's sort of, loud enough for me to hear, says to Meg, he's like, see, that's the problem with David. He thinks there's some secret club of successful Hollywood people that he's not a member of yet. And as soon as he realizes there is no club and he's talented, he's going to go far. And ding, the door's open, and he's like, okay, I'll see you later. He just walks off. And just sort of like, the door's closed, and it's like, damn. So that was the type of Robert. Robert is the type of guy that just calls it like he sees it, and he tells you, and if you don't like it, that's your problem. In a great way. And then Zelda, I don't have too much, sorry we don't have time for this, but Zelda gave me her phone number.
I saw it. He showed me last night. He's got the thing. He's got.
One of my colleagues had worked with Zelda before, and he said, "You gotta watch out for her. She likes younger men." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And he's like, "No, she really likes younger men." And sure enough, she shows up on set in Portland with this strapping, handsome young guy, and like something like a Latino, Carlos, who's just gorgeous, like his hair was in slow motion. And I'm like, oh my god. And Scotty Glosserman asked me to keep Zelda company because it was like an overnight shoot, and like, just keep her awake, keep her occupied. So I'm sitting there talking to her, and trying to think of things to say. I'm talking about cooking, and I'm like reciting a spaghetti recipe.
You're trying to keep her awake by talking about spaghetti?
That's how bad it is. And she's just digging in her purse, not paying attention to me, just scribbling and writing. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm losing her. And she turns to me, she's like, well, I'm a very good cook as well. You should come over for dinner sometime. And she hands me a 3x5 index card. I still have it. It says Zelda with her number on it. It's one of my most prized possessions.
I saw it. It's real.
I'm never going to be able to watch Poltergeist again.
I did not ever go over to her house. I'm sorry to say that.
Missed opportunity.
Yes.
And most masks and slasher flicks have kind of a backstory, like the William Shatner mask and Halloween, and some others. What was the genesis of that mask that was used as a film? Was that designed with any particular?
Yeah, we knew we wanted a sort of embryonic young boy who was sort of been stunted in his development from his backstory that he was abused, and he was thrown into a river, and turtles picked his bones. So Scott's kind of like, there's got to be like a turtle kind of quality to it, and that was pretty much it. And then E. Larry Day was our VFX guy, and Scott and E. Larry Day kicked it around, and to my understanding, that was born of Scott and Larry Day.
Were there any improvisations on the set on the way into the movie? Like, I'm thinking about that one scene in the library where you go, Paradise Lost, found it. Which, was that an improvisation? Because it seemed like one to me,
It wasn't in the script, but
okay.
we don't really know what. Remember before we were talking about going out drinking the night before?
Yeah. Okay.
So somebody said that one night, and I thought it was hilarious, and I don't know why, and I don't remember who said it, and nobody remembers who said it. But in any case, the last night of shooting, we were in the Portland Downtown Public Library, and it seemed like, well, there's probably a copy of Paradise Lost around here somewhere. So we got a copy and just shoved it in the stack. I thought, there's probably a way we can squeeze it in somewhere.
Okay.
We found so well.
This seems everything you talked about, told me about the experience on this film, indicates that it's one of those rare productions where everybody gets the sense that they're part of something special. At what point did you realize that this was the case? Was it just instantaneous? Was it as you were doing filming? Was there one kind of discovery moment when you came to that realization?
I thought it was all along the way. It just felt like there were signs all along the way that, okay, it feels like we're not screwing that part of it up. It feels like we're not screwing that part of it up. And just kind of once we wrap production, you know, seeing it work its way through post, okay, it feels like we're not screwing that part of it up, and you know, and it definitely hit, you know, obstacles along the way, but you know, there was a different edit of it that had notes of what ended up being the final film, but it just needed some really great fine tuning in the edit, and it arrived at something that feels like, okay, well, it's a good time, and it's something that people can confidently recommend to, you know, friends for a good time, and you know, there's not too many little unknown gems like that, and we tend to occupy that space, more the space of unknown gems, but you know, it's always nice. People like to, you know, share those, you know, yeah, little nuggets.
It's interesting that it's like 17 years later and we're at a convention we're talking about.
Yeah,
That's got to be gratifying.
that's something I wanted to segue to. I know
Yeah.
we're running out of time, but I think when it debuted at South by Southwest in 2006, there was quite a lot of buzz, and we were sort of the hot talk of the festival for a minute. And distributors were knocking, and we all thought, oh my God, here we go, rocket ship, yay, woo woo, and then it just didn't really materialize. So it was a real roller coaster. We thought, oh my God, this is going to happen, and then it was sort of a firework. But I think that the moment that I realized that we had something really special, if I'm being really totally honest, it was a couple of months ago. When, you know, I had done a short film called Wait For It, a horror short, and started to get some phone calls and people asking, hey, what's going on with this? Is this related to Behind the Mask? And I was like, that's crazy. And the only thing that people ever ask about is there going to be a sequel? Is there going to be a part 3? And I think that it was a couple months ago where I kind of started to revisit it and say, why? Why is it? Why is it that 20 years later or 15 years later, you know, there's a review of Behind the Mask and some, you know, a web reviewer will say, hey, undiscovered gem, Behind the Mask, and I'll look at it and the review of a movie that's 15 years old is getting 20,000 views. And it just, and this is the way for me to segue to this, which is, and I say this at every chance I get, and I mean this, when Behind the Mask premiered, it didn't do well. It went away from the theaters in like a week. And it bombed, it absolutely bombed. And it was hard to take as a filmmaker and a writer. It was such a blow to our ego, especially off the high of being the darling of South by Southwest, right? How do you blow that? And nothing happened. And it was really, really a crushing blow to my ego and my confidence as a writer. And yet, as the years have gone by, it is absolutely because of you guys. It is absolutely because of the fans of this movie. You have kept Leslie Vernon alive. You've kept his universe in the discussion. You're constantly referring it to your friends. And I actually get choked up talking about this because without you guys, without the fans, goosebumps right now, I would not have a career. I would not be sitting here talking about what I want to do next. It is completely because of the fan base, the horror community that have kept Leslie Vernon alive. For that, I am eternally grateful to all of you.
That was really beautiful.
You know, when something is that good, it survives. It finds its way, and it's a brilliant film. You were talking about a sequel. There was actually a graphic novel that was a sequel.
Oh, you mean this one right here,
Yeah.
which is available for
It's
purchase?
Available for purchase. Great.
No,
But I've heard that everybody loves it, right? You guys are familiar with it. You think it would make a great sequel. How come it hasn't happened? Because
it's
I
set-
would love it.
It's
I
set
mean,
right in
everybody
the,
would love it.
it's set in the aftermath of the original film, so it's like Halloween 2. It's a continuation of events, and we never were able to get it financed or get it off the ground, and it just, you know, all due respect to my family, but, you know, we're all 20 years older, and Scott's
Yeah.
no longer with us, and Zelda's no longer with us, and it's hard, it would be hard to do it, you know, pick up the night of and have it be convincing. So it does exist, the canon is there, and, you know, all jokes aside, I mean, you can go to vernonsfarmhouse.com, which is this really obscure website that we started a long time ago, and I think they have the omnibus collection of this. I do have 3 copies of it that I brought. They're autographed by Scott Blosserman, the director, and I'm happy to have Nathan and Angela and I sign it. So shameless plug, but you can go get it online, I believe. But the point is, it does exist in the canon, and if there's something that I'm working on is the third part of the story, which will be a much more contemporary, like Halloween H2O, 20 years later. What's been going on with Leslie and Taylor in the intervening years. So that's my next, hopefully, foray into the Leslie Vernon universe.
How are we doing on time, guys? Well, I can't thank you guys enough. It brought back memories of being
Thank
back
you,
in a 6th
Charlie.
grade classroom.
We warned
at
you. We
times-
told you though.
At
We-
times I had control, sometimes I didn't. But
If
I
anybody-
still
if anybody
loved
does-
my students.
If anybody does have any questions or anything, we're happy to hang out for a while.
Sure.
At our table.
Yeah. Thank
Make
you
sure
guys so
stop
much.
by their table and ask any questions. I'm sorry.
We
Angela.
love you. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for coming over.